Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name might be Isaiah and today I am talking about the military because why the fuck not? I actually don't remember why it came up. Briar, why did it come up?
It came up in a YouTube video that I don't recall as the one guy pretended to join the military.
Oh yeah, Sebastian Bale or whatever.
Sebastian Balls.
Today is the day that I finally tell my girlfriend the secret I've been hiding and why I am joining the army. I freaking got you! And this is clearly a costume, and we got some fake military papers.
I believed him for a second, too, and I would have never known it was a prank without that record scratch.
And he was being critiqued by someone. I swear I've seen that video like once before. So yeah, the military came up because of that, and also because I've been trying to get a couple of gigs to supplement my non-existent income. Fun times. And I mentioned that I'm very good at moving because I've been a military brat, so moving is very common. And I am very passionate about this because I hate the military. I have no respect for the military industrial complex, and I think the U.S. should burn it all to the ground and start over, but that's never going to happen. And it's for several different reasons. For one, the fact that our history classes make a big deal of how Britain was very stupid in the fact that they wanted to have the sun never set on the British Empire and all that shit. But I mean, the US is basically doing the same thing. Like, one of the reasons that any real socialist, communist, anarchist movements do not work in other countries is because everybody is so tied into each other nowadays. And to explain it in dumb language, because I'm not intelligent, smaller countries often have to take loans out from like bigger governments or bigger like international complexes. So then they get stuck in a loan. So then they have to pay back the loan. And the only way that they can pay back the loan is by participating in capitalism. And then, I mean, the US has a fantastic history of just anytime there was the potential for a non-capitalistic movement to happen, they would go in and crush it. I mean, we have an entire period called the Cold War, which was basically that. So that's a great reason to also hate the military. They don't do very well by the veterans. Like, if you go on Reddit, you can see veterans, disabled and not, complaining about the military and not to glorify military service, because while these people did sacrifice for good reasons and bad, as soon as they're out of the military, they get forgotten about. My dad actually joined the Marine Corps when he was 18, and when I was 16, he went to Afghanistan for a year, and he was very fortunate because when he got back, he was able to get a diagnosis for PTSD. But my dad is the very old school toxic masculine sort, and while he was still married to my mother, he refused to get help. And one time he almost drove us off the road because he thought a Lay's potato chip can was an IED. And all this for a war that's still not over and hasn't really done anything. And that really leads me into why I hate the military recruitment process so much. Because my dad got recruited at 18. He came from a low-income family in the middle of nowhere, Georgia. And the only way that he saw to get out was by joining the Marines. Or I guess any military branch would have done, but he got snapped up by the Marines first. And like I said, my dad was low income. He was white. He had anger problems. So he was perfect. And when you look at statistics, even as recently as 2020, you'll notice that there is a predisposition for military recruitment tactics to target the high schools that have a predominantly poor income that are in the South. The South actually apparently gives about 20% more from their high schools than more liberal areas, and it makes sense because when you think of the South, you think of the low income, rural. They're the poor white people who are racist and conservative despite their own interests because they don't understand and they don't want to understand why a system could be working against them as well, even though they are supposedly part of a privileged class. And is also host to other low income POC, so black people, brown people that came in. Like where I lived in Alabama, there was a heavy Hispanic, Latino population, and a heavy population specifically from Guatemala. There was also the black and the Latino populations were also heavily regulated into the poorer areas of where I lived, which was a town that was very white and a touristy place. So the income would come in and all the white people would get it and everyone else was tucked away in the projects, at least until the 2011 tornadoes came through and suddenly all the trees got ripped out and the low-income housing got amazing lakeside views. But because of how things happened in the South, between the South being mostly rural to start with, like from the very beginning, it was agricultural focused. And I talked about this yesterday on the ACE SMP server, but part of the reason why the southern states were so tied to slave labor is because cotton picking and cotton as a crop isn't a very easy crop to deal with. That's why the cotton gin press was such an amazing technological leap. Then it became more and more about not wanting to pay people proper wages, wanting to make the most. It becomes capitalism. Slavery started and continued because of capitalism, with a product that wasn't exactly easy to work with from the beginning. And then you go into the John Crow laws and the fact that there's still historical precedent and systemic racism putting black and brown people in poorer areas, and they become targets for the military as well. The military also targets men a lot more than women, and they have historically as well, because the idea is that the men are supposed to be the protectors. The military feeds into the toxic masculinity perspective, where women have to be weak and stay at home, and men have to go out and hunt and kill. And honestly, there's nothing worse, in my opinion, than a military recruiter. Yeah, there's like MLM people, they're annoying as hell, and they can get women in and put them into years and years of debt. But most of the time, those MLM companies aren't going to young teenagers who have no hope or prospects of the future and are offering job security, benefits, stable income. Because, I mean, think about it. Think about the U.S. There's most of the states, I believe, are at will employment, meaning you can get fired at any time for any reason. It's very heavily stacked against us. And when you are a person who has grown up poor, who feels like they have no control over their life, who has been told over and over again by their contemporaries and by media and everything else that, hey, you are shit, from it being on the left side because you are white and you refuse to acknowledge that you are privileged and have certain statuses that put you above black people because, and you, from what you can see, you don't have those privileges. You're getting told that you're shit because you are growing up as a man and you don't have the intelligence of some of your peers that's highly valued. You are just like a big old idiot with anger problems. So the school shits on you. Sometimes the parents shit on you, or the parents are, because there's a high, most recruitment nowadays comes from military families, so it's like being passed along. So you're being pressured on that front to join the military to continue the tradition. Just on and on and on. And like I said, this affects black people and brown people as well, because especially if you're in the South, you're being treated like shit because everyone's fucking racist. This is your chance to get out. I dated someone in high school who wanted to join the Marine Corps because his family was shit. He actually lived with the youth pastor at the time before he went crazy and threatened to shoot up his family. He loved running, but he wasn't very smart. He didn't really feel like he had any good career prospects. So he tried to join the Marine Corps and they rejected him because he had a medical issue. My dad, because my dad was former Marine, offered to try and talk with them, but the guy gave up. And I broke up with him, and the last time I checked in, he married someone my sister's age when that was still an age gap that would be weird and uncomfortable, and he had like 2 kids, and he's still in that hometown to this day not doing much because he couldn't get out. So that leads me to the next thing. What happens to the people that don't hack it? Well, I mean, why do you think we have police officers? Why is the police enforcement so heavily militarized now? It's a combination of the glorification of guns and weapons in our movies, the glorification of the military. Retired military personnel want to go into it. Or, I can't hate on retired military personnel going into the police officer position so much, just because they actually have gun training, whereas most of the police officers that we have issues with, not saying all the retired vets are okay. I don't think anyone who's a police officer is okay. I think you are participating in an inherently corrupt system, and the only way to fix it is to have massive walkouts throughout the country. But at least they have actual weapons training, as opposed to the yahoos who couldn't get into the Army or the Air Force or the Marine Corps, or they dropped out of Parris Island, because Parris Island is an absolute beast of a it's an absolute beast. Like, there's, in the Marine Corps, there's jokes about how the San Diego location is for the pansies. And I kind of fell into those thought processes because my dad went to Parris Island. So, you know, he was one of the tougher ones. He also talked about how in high school he popped someone's eye out. So, yeah. So, the part of why the police officers are so reckless and highly militarized is because they're also full of people who want to be in the military and go shoot people. But for one reason or the other, they couldn't get in. And so, I finished this to say, I hate the military. I hate the fact that vets have such a difficult time getting the benefits they need. I hate the fact that a large portion of the homeless population is veterans who have mental disorders and addiction, in part because of the time they spent in the military. And I think we should demilitarize the U.S. military and start trying to let countries actually develop on their fucking own, instead of going in and destroying any chance they have so we can put in a puppet leader, or wage a 20-year war. The war we've been in is all I can remember from my entire life. But that's it for me today. I do want to say I'm going to be dropping some links down about art commissions. And I finally got my Etsy up for my artwork. In a couple of days, I should have a couple of posts up for, what are they called? For my journals, because I just finished making one of the journals. I just need to make sure that I made it correctly so it's not going to completely fall apart. I hope to have something a little more art related tomorrow, if only to be as a background once again, because got a couple of art projects coming up. Some of it is going to include my planning out, and if I'm going to plan it out, I might as well use it as backdrop, right? Why not? But y'all stay hydrated. I am going to go and apply to continue this application process as being a substitute teacher. Talk to y'all tomorrow. Bye.